Squirreling food away in my freezer was never how I used to approach meal planning. It was always, what should I make this week? While flipping through a food magazine or browsing Pinterest. No rhyme or reason. But now I'm more methodical. I tend to plan meals around what we already have in the house. Even so, I often need to plan freezer cleanout challenges because when it's out of sight, it's out of mind. I completely forget what I have in there, and I don't always want to do freezer inventory because it can take a good 30 minutes or more, depending on how thorough I am. This December and January, I did a freezer cleanout challenge, and I was surprised how long the food lasted. I should have known because when I did a freezer cleanout challenge last summer, the food lasted way more than just 1 month. In this video, I will be showing you 7 of the meals I made for my winter freezer cleanout challenge. I would love to show you even more, but I tried that last summer and learned that editing a video with more meals than that can take way more hours than I'm willing to commit for just one video. I actually did the inventory for my large freezer right before Thanksgiving when I pulled everything out so I could get a pig head that was at the very bottom of the freezer. That's right, a pig head. I'll link the video in the description below if you want to watch that. I wrote down the inventory from our large freezer that day, but I didn't start using the food until after I did the inventory from the smaller freezer under my fridge as well. And that was in mid-December. Okay, let's get right into the meals. For each of these meals, I'm going to show you what I got out of my freezer in order to make it. During a freezer cleanout challenge, I still go grocery shopping, but all my meals revolve around food that's already in my freezer. This first meal is Spanish rice. It's a recipe I've had for quite some time, and I absolutely love it. But I hadn't made it in several years. And that's probably because my kids started complaining about it, so I just kept it off the menu until now. Oh, I wanted to show you how I keep track of the inventory during the challenge. I just put a check mark by anything that I use. When I actually use that thing up, I'll just cross it out so I know it's no longer in the freezer. Just a warning, when you use frozen vegetables in a soup or a dish like this where they are being added to a hot oil, they will start to pop and splatter, so just be aware of this and be careful. On this particular night, I didn't follow the recipe to a T. I didn't have bacon in my freezer, but I did have cracklins and ham. So I used the cracklins at the start for the fat, and I added the ham at the end to replace the bacon pieces. I also added celery, even though the recipe doesn't call for it, mostly because I really wanted to get it out of my freezer right away. One of the reasons my kids didn't care for the Spanish rice when they were younger is because I left the stewed tomatoes in big chunks. Well, I'm older and wiser now, so now I pulse them with my immersion blender so the stewed tomatoes can go undetected and my kids enjoy their meal that much more. And it worked because they all said they liked it. Instead of water, like the recipe calls for, I used chicken broth that I had in my fridge. It's not very gelatinous like it usually is because it was meat stock and I didn't add enough bones. But it's still very nutritious. I really hate food waste, so I like to pour broth or water in a can after I empty it so I can get every last bit out of it before throwing it away. The recipe calls for stewed tomatoes, but I only had one 14.5 ounce can. So I added some tomato juice in place of the remaining stewed tomatoes, since that was what I had in my freezer. After adding all the ingredients, I gave it a good stir and put the lid on to continue cooking for about 25 minutes. There was still quite a bit of liquid when I checked on it, so I let it cook for 10 minutes longer until most of the liquid was absorbed by the rice. Then I added the ham and mixed it in. We probably could have eaten it just as it was, but I decided to let it cook for about 5 more minutes before serving. I still can't believe I didn't make Spanish rice for all those years just because my kids complained about it. It's so good. And my kids liked it this time. The ham was a really nice substitute for the bacon, and I think pureeing those stewed tomatoes was a good call.
These are my favorite, probably, besides the band.
Next, I wanted to show you the chicken stock, because I almost always use what is already in my freezer to make it. The bones and the onion scraps are usually straight from my freezer. Sometimes I'll have frozen carrots and celery as well that I'll put in the stock. I tend to make stock at least once a week, especially in the winter, and I'll use it in several meals or freeze it after 3 or 4 days. The next meal was a breakfast for dinner and was quick and easy. I made this sausage meat with ground beef and sausage seasonings like fennel, sage, and Italian seasoning.
That's why I want cast iron.
We had some rolls left over, so we toasted them slightly in the oven and spread on butter, then sprinkled them with cinnamon sugar. It was a delightfully simple meal.
I forgot to show that I made this chicken noodle soup for lunch from the broth that I made this morning. We ate it for lunch, so there's 2 quarts left.
Do you like the theme I have going here? You know, simple, cheap, and easy? Then you're gonna love the next meal. Sheet pan sausage and veggies is a huge hit around here every time I make it. I am salivating just thinking about it. We usually use potatoes, onions, and peppers, but you could use whatever vegetables you have on hand. Sometimes I wonder if using different fats or oils makes a difference in the outcome of a meal. So this time I used avocado oil on one of the sheet pans and lard on the other sheet pan. I just had to melt the lard in order for this to work. My conclusion was that the avocado oil actually made the veggies more crisp, but they really tasted almost identical. Either way, you can use many different fats on the veggies and meat. Just don't forget about it. It's also really important to season well with salt and pepper. You could also add herbs like basil, oregano, or parsley for a pop of flavor. I still had plenty of the ground beef sausage, so I decided to add that to the pan during the last 5 minutes of cooking. We had to leave right after this was done cooking, so I just turned off the oven and left the sheet pans in the oven. And then when we got back, about an hour and a half later, it was absolutely perfect. So yummy. You can serve this meal with ketchup, hot sauce, or even a yogurt sauce, but we just ate it as is on that day. Now, what kind of freezer clean-out video would this be without some kind of Tex-Mex meal on the menu? I mean, seriously, who doesn't love a good taco, burrito, or quesadilla? I had some pork and refried beans in the freezer and decided to use them on our tostadas for this meal. I got the protein out a couple hours before dinner, so the pork was going to need a bit of help before I could dump it into a saucepan and reheat it. I just put it in cold water for about an hour, flipping halfway through. The refried beans are a lot easier to reheat because I always freeze them in silicone muffin cups before putting them in a freezer bag, so they come apart really easily. Once I got the pork into a saucepan, I poured some broth over it, maybe less than 1/4 cup, and just put the heat on low. While that was getting started, I prepared the corn tortillas for the oven to make the tostadas. I just brushed each tortilla with coconut oil on both sides and sprinkled with sea salt. Then I put them into a 400-degree Fahrenheit oven for about 12 minutes, flipping halfway through. You'll want to check on them after 9 to 10 minutes because sometimes your oven might cook them too fast. I like to make sure they're crunchy so they're easier for us to eat. We have eaten them chewy one too many times, and I'll just say it's not very pleasant. We topped our tostadas with the pork, refried beans, salsa, sour cream, and candied jalapenos. There are a lot of other toppings you could use, but these are just what we had on hand. I always find it funny that we rarely eat tacos or Mexican food on Tuesdays for Taco Tuesday. Even if I write it down on my meal plan to eat something like that on a Tuesday, it just doesn't happen. We ate these tostadas on a Saturday, but I can tell you they were still pretty scrumptious. Here's a breakfast we had that could have easily been dinner as well. I had some leftover gravy in the fridge from Christmas dinner, so I figured I'd make biscuits and gravy since we still had plenty of ground beef sausage in the freezer. I thought it would be fun to serve it with some hot cocoa and marshmallow fluff. I will say, my gravy wasn't thick at all. It was very thin, but I do normally try to use a thick gravy for biscuits and gravy. We ditched hot cocoa packets a couple years ago, and we've been making it from scratch ever since. To a saucepan, I added coconut milk, almond milk, vanilla, maple syrup, cocoa powder, and sea salt, and mixed everything up. You can find the link to the recipe in the description box. We had leftover marshmallow fluff in the fridge from making it a few days before, so it was really easy to just scoop into each mug of hot cocoa. I like to use the recipe from Jessica at Three Rivers Homestead, which I have linked below. Everyone thoroughly enjoyed this delightful breakfast. The final meal I've got for you today is gnocchis con tuco, which is basically potato pasta with pasta sauce. So my husband grated all these carrots more than a week earlier, which I am so grateful for, but because he stuffed them all into 1 gallon-sized freezer bag, they were pretty hard to break off so I could actually use the amount I needed. It took some pounding, but I was finally able to get those carrots for my sauce. My husband's mom taught me how to make the tuco many, many years ago. And my husband made the gnocchis and put them in the freezer so we could easily cook them whenever we wanted. Gnocchis is what they call gnocchi in Argentina. Gnocchi, if you're not familiar, is the potato pasta that comes from Italy. I have actually shown the process of me making tuco in a video before, so if you want a more in-depth overview, check out that video in the description. I had my little helper slice the frozen sausage for the tuco, and he got to add them and the chicken to the pot. This meal is one that I make on Sundays because my husband grew up eating pasta each and every Sunday. Not pasta in a package. No, 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 no. Carefully handmade with lots of time and love pasta. So you know it was good. My mother-in-law would often spend much of Saturday preparing said pasta, and the family would pretty much lick the pasta pot clean on Sunday. I am not that dedicated to Sunday pasta dinner, but we try to make it more special at least once a month. I have to admit, it can be a pain to make pasta from scratch, especially when you have to form each gnocchi just right. But boy, are they just light little pillows of joy in your mouth. If you've never tried homemade gnocchis, get on it. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Hopefully you got a few new meal ideas or just some tips for making freezer cooking easier. My goal was to get this video out over 2 months ago, but there was really no plan or true intention, which is why it took so long. I have so much video footage that it's kind of overwhelming sometimes. Let me know in the comments what videos you'd like to see in the future. Have a blessed day.